Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is Kelly Perales with the Midwest team, and together with Susan Barrett from Old Dominion University, we are representing our collective team as the Center on PBIS, and today is our last meeting for the school year around the interconnected systems framework. And this professional learning community has been convening about monthly here this school year. And today we're gonna talk about some things as we wrap up and prepare for summer and think about the new school year, which I'm sure you've already been doing for months now. But we're gonna do a little bit of connecting as we get started. And then we're going to talk about a topic that always comes up with the ISF, which is confidentiality, and a sneak peek of some strategies and recommendations that will be coming out in a new technical assistance brief, hopefully here this summer. And then point you to some other resources, both at pbis.org and another document that was shared in a webinar from the U.S. Department of Education, and then a little bit about some opportunities for upcoming PD before we close out our time together. So as we get started, it is a small group. You could feel free to unmute and just share out loud, or you're welcome to type in chat something that you look forward to during the summer. And as Casey was mentioning when he was coming online, I think for probably most of the people who join this call, we don't have a school year calendar. In other words, we'll still be working this summer, but hopefully there's also some time for fun and relaxation. So go ahead and type in chat or come off of mute to share something you look forward to during the summer. Amy Wheeler-Sutton is moving into a new house with a pool. We will have to get ourselves invited there, Amy. All right, Ashley says camping and spending days at the beach. Amy Flamini being on the front porch and doing nothing. I like that. All right, awesome. Thanks everyone for typing in chat. All of those things sound fun. So again, as I mentioned, things that we know about this summer is that although there will be time for all of the things you're mentioning in chat, our work will continue, and you'll be refining plans for the next school year, the priorities that you're going to be focusing on or supporting your districts and schools with their work. And for students who, at the end of the day, I hope are benefiting from all of our collective efforts, especially those with mental health needs, they're going to most likely continue to meet with clinicians and receive intervention outside of school. I know sometimes that still happens within a school building, but it might happen out in the community or at a provider agency building, or even sometimes in homes. And we're going to need to focus ongoing on our systems collaboration. So we thought that as we kind of opened up today, we would maybe just have some large group discussion here with some of the things that are on your mind around the work that you have been doing. So there's a couple of prompts here, and you might have other things on your mind, but as you're thinking about teaming and system structures within districts and schools, do you have community partners or family members on your teams? Or are there some on the teams of the districts and schools you support? Within schools, what type of discussion is happening on teams with community clinicians as part of them? And how is confidentiality currently addressed in your sites? So again, we're just going to pause here. I'm going to let you think about these questions or other things that might be on your mind, and then I'm going to stop sharing just so we can see each other a little bit better. And Susan, feel free to jump in if there are other things you want to say related to these prompts.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. What I'm going to do is take a screenshot and put it in chat so that we can see the questions when we stop sharing. So.
All right. Debbie says all these prompts are things that can be challenging to varying degrees. Yeah. All right. Thanks, Susan. All right. So with that, Susan put the prompts in chat, and it'd be great to hear what your experiences are.
And one of the things we're worried about is that just at the moment, you guys are completely embedding behavioral health clinicians, whether they're school employed or community employed, you start to integrate, all of a sudden summer emerges and you're back to that caseload mentality. And so how do you kind of offset that notion?
Yeah, Kelly, we can chime in on the first question.
Okay.
You know, considering district and school-based teams, we do have community partners on all of our tier 1 teams. When I say all, it's encouraged, and for the most part, we do. At the district level, our community partners tend to be those we work closest with, and that we partner to provide services like, just for example, the mental health provider that takes care of our employee assistance program on our team, one of the major hospitals that we work with to transition kids in crisis in and out there, Save Our Children Coalition, because they do a lot of survey work. Just long story short, organically, whoever seems to fit, we do have those community partners on our teams and tend to help us plan supports for the upcoming year. Now, school-based teams are a little different. Yeah, Stacy will hop in on that one. She works more closely with school.
And Casey and Stacy are in Warren County, Kentucky, and they have been part of the state's Project Aware grant over the years, just so everyone has that context. Go ahead, Stacy.
So I'm going to start out with a celebration. I think we had 16 schools that either they may not have their data entered just yet, but have completed the ISF implementation inventory. And we did a training this year. So I do know that many of our schools, that is a part of their action plan for the upcoming year. And they have started looking at, and this is what we told them, really look at those natural fits for community partners that you're already working with that really focus on the mental health aspect and connect them. One of the things that we've talked to our schools about too is not to overwhelm yourself, to start small, but to really build those meaningful, the relationships with the meaningful partnerships. So Life Skills is one of our mental health agencies that many of our schools, have counselors that come in already. So that is an example that you would see in some of our schools. But like Bristow, for example, BRASS, which is a home for people who are, I just went blank, who have to go there because of, what am I thinking, Casey? I just went blank. BRASS, just when they are, sorry.
It's okay.
I just went completely blank, where there's spouse abuse and things like that. So they go and live in those homes. So Bristow gets a lot of the students that move into that facility. So that is someone that they've included on their team. So again, our team membership really does focus on who is just a natural fit in your school. And it really is one of those action plans that we have started making, encourage schools to look at, as well as incorporating a family member and really pushing for someone who is not connected with the school too, getting that family member outside.
Thank you, Stacy.
Stacy, that's really helpful. I'm curious about the onboarding process by which that kind of happened, because I know that we use such different language, and there's sometimes hesitancy to kind of have those members fully embedded, and that kind of ambassador logic where you're kind of connecting and understanding each other's systems and kind of working through that common language, common understanding about the systems barriers that we might have related to how we coordinate our efforts. So can you talk a little bit about kind of the onboarding and how comfortable community providers are in the spaces of schools?
I'm going to specifically talk about Bristow Elementary, and Bristow Elementary, I think, has been in this process since about 2017. So what we did, Greg partnered, I don't know who with, but and did a training with mental health providers in the area, as well as schools. Warren County was one of those. So we all went through that initial training together. So what we did at Bristow, we went and trained at KD with Kelly. We came back, we made an action plan. We picked the members that we felt were important to our school at Bristow. We then invited them to a summer, just a meeting, just to kind of go over what the purpose is, and just talked about confidentiality. And of course, this is just tier 1 right here is what I'm talking about. And that's what I've encouraged our schools to do, is to start with that tier 1 membership. So that meeting was really important. And then we didn't start with them coming to all of our PBIS meetings. We started, at least for the first couple of years, just doing twice a year, like once in the fall and once in the spring. So we started at that rate to build our comfort, to build their comfort. So we started slowly. So I think that's what's been most important. And then when we got during COVID, when we were doing all these virtual meetings, we just invited them to come when they could, and just left that open. And so, but it was because, we built that up, just that systems, and we still got a long ways to go, but that was definitely helpful.
Thanks, that's helpful. I think it's important. You make a good point in that it's important for us to recognize how long this takes to develop trust, to develop those relationships, to understand each other's kind of role in this work. And we saw that in Monterey County. It took, almost a full year for folks to feel comfortable in the spaces of schools. So just, that's a great reminder that it does take time.
And I will say COVID slowed that process down, but I will say now we, Bristow, and not just Bristow, we have other schools, specifically elementary schools, that are doing mental health nights, or they're inviting mental health providers to school events where they can either set up a table to help and things like that. So it's grown from just that PBIS ISF meeting to how can we get you into our schools for families to see.
Yeah, and if I could jump in and point out, not only are we bringing people in, though, we make an intentional effort to push people out. So we have just today, one of our, we have a liaison, a district mental health counselor that we send her to everything community. She just pushes out anything that's sort of applicable, any of our partners that are working on any kind of community council, child advocacy agency, any of those committees, you really push out so that we can connect with them on their terms and their space. So this is from a district perspective. So it's a lot easier to bring them in. So those relationships are being built in those outside agencies from pushing out and then bringing back in. It kind of seems to work pretty well that way.
That big idea of family school community partnerships, right? And it's not just within the schools, but the larger school community. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Can I ask Stacy a question? I think I heard you say that you invite the families, when you were talking about the elementary school example, to the meeting just twice a year as like a way to, or can you explain? I wanted to make sure I understood that idea.
When we first started inviting mental health providers to our PBIS ISF meeting, we initially invited them to a meeting in the first quarter of the year, and then one at the last semester. But not just families, just that partnership to start with. But now at Bristow anyhow, it's an open invite for all of them when those meetings happen.
Yeah, that's great. I was just thinking for some of our more folks that are feeling like that's a heavy lift, I just like that sort of pointer to say, start small. Maybe it's not everyone. So thank you for that tip. I just wanted to make sure I understood what worked for you to then build the closer relationships was a smaller ask to grow bigger, I guess.
Yeah, and that really helped our team feel, comfortable to just build those relationships. I think that was a big help to begin with. And that meeting that we had over the summer when we invited them all in, that was something that, we just talked about the expectations and, we got their input too, but we felt like that was an important meeting to have at first.
Thank you.
I will say now at Bristow, I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but it's pretty exciting. Some of the things that we really are our schools are really trying to push out. Now they're even going to invite some of the mental health providers or their partners that are on their PBIS ISF team to some of their trainings to pull that into. So that will be interesting to see if we have some that show up.
You guys are amazing. I want to give also a shout out to that regional cooperative that serves, of course, a bunch of different districts in their area, because they have laid some foundations around the idea of integrated school-based behavioral health that includes community partners going back quite a number of years. They've been having annual trainings, usually 2-day affairs, on the topic, and always inviting those community providers. Now, they can't always attend, but they're at least always included in the conversation. And to the extent that you already have some existing district partnerships, that's an opportunity to reinforce and to develop the shared language and whatnot. But when those partnerships don't exist yet, you're at least getting some of the same content out to community partners that we hope will engage with the work at some point.
Thanks, Catherine. What about some of those other prompts? Debbie, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you were saying that those things are challenging.
It's particularly challenging today because we're still in our AWARE grant, and we have a partner. We have a difficult school, and they're trying to set their expectations for how things should work. And they literally said, we're fine to include the clinicians to talk about how to create a referral system. When we said we need to build in systems, and I was like, no, referral system, like basically like to talk about how they can send students to them. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I was just, when I saw that question, it was just like, it's a little sensitive for me, because I was like, how do I even answer this? They've just gone, and we've known they're our problem child school, because it's an administrator that really likes to run a very tight ship in the specific ways that she wants. And so this way of thinking has been a challenge for her, and the district wanted us to work with the school, but it was one of those examples where they picked their most challenged school, I think, instead of picking a more ready school. And so now here we are. I'm embarrassed to say, like 4 years into it, with the principal saying, well, the only way they want to have a system with clinicians is to talk about how to refer students to the clinician. Yeah, so just hit a little close to home, Kelly, that's all.
No, that's okay. And I suspect you are not alone in terms of No matter, and I'm going to quote Trisha, who's having a little lunch behind camera. I'm outing her now. No matter how we sometimes Jedi mind trick, getting folks to understand what it is that we're talking about with systems change, you come back the next time and they're like, okay, where's that clinician so we can give them a caseload of kids to work with off in a corner somewhere, right? Mm-hmm.
Thanks for understanding.
Well, I saw a lot of head nodding, as so even the people I can't see are probably nodding heads. So,
Well, the larger context for that, right, is I think our American society just wants that quick fix that, oh, we'll send them there, we'll fix them, and then they'll come back fixed, right? And we just perpetuate that myth. And we're just a microcosm of that larger kind of culture where take a pill, buy a shoe, or a pair of shoes, sorry, one shoe. But it just, yeah, the easy button, right, Trish? Yeah, yeah. And this is really challenging work, and it's really hard to kind of convince people. I think the other thing is that schools have been really reluctant to be transparent and vulnerable and say, you know what, we don't have this, even though that they're obligated, to legally they just don't. And so it's really hard to develop those relationships so that you can be transparent and vulnerable and say, we got to do this together, otherwise it's really not going to work. Yeah, if it were easy, it would have been done already. Yeah, exactly, Trish.
I will
frankly, go ahead, Debbie.
I was just going to say, on the plus side, in the district, the clinical staff that we're trying to collaborate with the school have really embraced MTSS. They come to all of our trainings. They just, several of them just went to the Northeast PBIS regional conference. So I also feel like we're not totally wasting effort. Like, it's going to stick somewhere because we're changing their way of thinking, even if that school doesn't really want them to be part of their systems teaming structure just yet. Right. Eventually.
Angela, I'm seeing your comment in chat. Thank you. I think these are two things for us to worry about, especially right now when there's been a lot of extra dollars put into the system, rightly so, to help address the need that I think we don't even yet have a full grasp of over these next 3-5 years and beyond. And so again, kind of to that theme, it's let's hire people or buy stuff, curriculum or what have you. And, I'm glad to hear that, and I know in talking with some of you, let's take a pause, go back to basics, examine what we're doing, find a few things and do them well. And the other piece is, I don't talk to every single one of you on here, but in a lot of places, there are not people, even if you wanted to hire them. And a lot of competition for the people who are maybe looking for work. And by the way, even if we hired, all the clinicians in the world, that will not be sufficient, right? We've got to be focused on those systems change features that we're speaking of. And by system, Debbie, we don't mean referral system, right? Yeah, so I gotcha. So,
yeah.
Good.
And I'm going to channel Kelsey Schmitz, because if she were on here, she would be saying this, you can't intervene your way out of a crappy core. So I think people don't really understand how important having a healthy ecosystem is, where everybody's thriving, where everybody is seen as valued and feels connected, feels like they've got a sense of belonging, feels like they are connected to a caring adult. Like, all those things are so critically important. So I was really excited when Stacy and Casey were talking about, we're just focused on tier 1, because if we don't get that right, then we're going to end up perpetuating the myth of, oh, we'll just add this shiny new thing and magic fairy dust approach. And we're going to just perpetuate kind of that old way of doing business. And now's the time to innovate, right? We've got a small window of time to be able to innovate and really change things. And so anyway, you can't intervene your way out of a crappy core.
I think people are so concerned with confidentiality. I find that tier 2 support, incorporating mental health providers outside of school with tier 2 support, is more concerning than tier 1. Obviously, we're just looking at data. We're not looking at specific students. Tier 3, we have specific mental health providers working with specific students. So I feel like Tier 3 is also an easier fit to help work direct, as a team to really focus on what works for students. But that's just my viewpoint. I mean, that's where I see my schools coming from.
How are your teams, any of you, either addressing confidentiality or not, or addressing how other people are joining teams, family members, community partners? Maybe we'll just take a few minutes on that and then jump into this upcoming brief to share a few thoughts with you all. And Ashley, thank you for the question you're posing in chat as well. If anyone wants to respond on that, you're welcome to.
I can chime in on, I'll brag on Medical Lake and Washington State, who have done a brilliant job of working with students and partnering with universities, because there is such a shortage, and they've got a dozen or so of students that they're working really, really closely with and training them in the systems dynamics. It's great because they get the experience of being inside schools as, while they're working on their degree, but they also are getting steeped in systems change and not perpetuating kind of old ways of doing business. And so I've been so impressed with their ability to get interns into the school system. Yeah, Trish, same deal. And Medical Lake is kind of a rural area as well with not a lot of resources. So really partnering with those local colleges and universities is really important. The other thing I think we were going to have to do is really lean into the notion of changing role of everybody in the building to be mental health ambassadors. And we have to be really explicit about the roles and lanes and what we want them to do. But yeah, we've got to really grow our capacity in this area for everybody to kind of lean into what this looks like and sounds like, and how this is really an instructional approach to teaching social emotional competencies.
Anyone else want to share about confidentiality or teaming structures?
Hey, Kelly, this is Katie Lee here, even though I look like
Hi.
Amy McSweeney in the picture.
That's
We had
right.
a really positive experience with a team that brought a parent involvement on Tier 1. And I just always remember after the very first meeting, the Tier 1 team was commenting on the experience of having the parent there. And they were like, you know what? We were much more on topic. We didn't go on side conversations about individual students because we had to keep confidentiality. And there was no reason why we need to even be talking about individual students at our meetings. So they really saw it as being contributing to them being better at keeping confidentiality and being more efficient as a Tier 1 team. So.
Thank you, Katie.
It may be worth chiming in is that while our outside community partners might not be present in some of those Tier 2, Tier 3 team meetings for confidentiality and FERPA issues, they do contribute. So we get treatment plans, transition plans, treatment notes, whatever is accurate or applicable to the students that might be on the agenda that day. So while they may not be physically present, we still reach out and get their input. So we don't have to worry as much about the confidentiality piece, but they are not physically present.
Thank you.
My thoughts on this, and I've been like even contemplating whether talking or not, but we have a tier 2, tier 3 teams that talk individual students, but it is important to have that core tier 2 team. And I feel like that is a great place to start pulling in some of those even community providers that would serve on your tier 1 team to help, because during that core team, you're really looking at, you know, the fidelity of the interventions, the interventions that you need, your intervention mapping, and that I think their expertise would be a great benefit in that area. So that's something that I've been talking to schools about too, is looking at incorporating in that core tier 2, tier 3 team.
Systems conversation. Thank you. With that, I'm gonna go back to sharing the PowerPoint. And, you know, again, some of you are more or less connected all the way down to the school level. But nevertheless, when thinking about the teaming structures, this is an example that is actually in chapter 5 of volume 2 of the ISF monograph. And, you know, if you just think about, if you've had the privilege of being at a school level team, what do they sound like when the teams meet? And Katie, you were just sharing an example of what you were hearing from teams about their dialogue and discussion. But here you can see this is using the team initiated problem solving process. It is a tier 2 system conversation where they're recognizing that some students who are in, check out are not making progress. And so they're looking at not only their DPR scores, but also some universal screening data, attendance data, and time out of class data. And then the team creates a goal and a timeline and an action plan. And you'll notice here that they're not talking about any one of these students by name. And so I suppose this would be kind of a model or exemplar of what we would train or provide technical assistance to teams when having tier 2 system conversations. And instead, I think sometimes, especially at advanced tiers, but sometimes even at tier 1, conversations are like this, right? Let's talk about each kid on a clinician's caseload, or let's talk about as a team, do we have all of our business in order before we would invite a community partner or a family member, or let's just run through all the kids who had a crisis this week, you know, whatever it might be. And I'm sure you have other examples as well. And so, you know, the first piece of this is, how do we continue to support and build the capacity within schools for teams to move towards those system conversations? Certainly, there would still need to be times where about one student who is not responding or needs more intensive intervention, there would be that problem-solving conversation where hopefully their parent or caregiver and teacher or teachers could be part of the discussion and formulating a plan. But nevertheless, we're not going to be able to efficiently operate if we're trying to solve things kind of one kid at a time. And so the other part of that then is, how do we make a plan for addressing confidentiality? And we've been talking about this for years, and it's written about a little bit in volume 2. There's some guidance in chapter 5 at the school level for how folks might situate and address confidentiality across the tiers. But we decided that there was a need to put together a practitioner brief, which is meant to be kind of a short, simple document that anyone could pick up and say, okay, I could put these strategies in place. And it turns out that even though we've been talking about it and have lots of things to say, when you go to put it in writing, it's really complicated. And that is because I'm not a lawyer. No one on our team is a lawyer. There is someone on Florida's team who is a lawyer, so she gave us a little bit of guidance. But you know, we're not here to give legal advice, and yet we have to make sure that folks are adhering to you know, FERPA, which is the law to protect educational records in schools, and HIPAA, which is the law to protect our health information. And so that would be true for any of the mental health or behavioral health information. We also want to make sure that everyone is practicing ethically, adhering to any state or district or provider organization policies. And above all, we should be respectful of students and families. And so what I think we boiled it down to is that there are a lot of misperceptions. And the misperceptions happen not because anyone is trying to be difficult, I don't think. I think we can assume positive intent. Everyone receives training about HIPAA and or FERPA as part of their onboarding as either an educator or a mental health clinician. People, like I said, I think want to adhere to their ethical standards and follow policies and all of those things. Yet when it comes down to putting all of that information into practice, it can be confusing. And so it leads to these kind of misperceptions that end up creating perceived barriers or lack of collaboration. And some of those you can see here, which is people think that you can't have any communication or data sharing without assigned consent from a parent or guardian, or that information can only be shared with like one person inside a school. So if I'm the mental health clinician, I might talk to the school counselor or social worker or the building principal, but that's it. And then because of some of these misperceptions, kids aren't really benefiting to the extent that they could from whatever supports and skills that they are learning. So for example, if a clinician is teaching coping skills, either in small group or in individual intervention, yet feels like those are, that information is protected by confidentiality, then there most likely isn't going to be transference and generalization of those skills across, the home or the classroom, because the teacher or parent might not know what the skills are or the words to use. Or sometimes teachers, maybe request for assistance and share about presenting problems, but then no one comes back to them with any feedback about what happened next, or, now the kid's working with a clinician, but what's happening in there, or what should they watch for to know about how it's impacting those presenting problems. And so, for maybe more years than I'd like to say out loud, these are the common things that I have heard when talking with educators and behavioral health providers. And I know that, my colleagues have heard those as well. So there's some examples in here. There will be examples in the TA brief. And again, I think the big thing here is, how do we tease out personal information about a child and family that without their permission shouldn't be shared, versus when we're talking about especially eliminating non-academic barriers so that kids can be successful in school and achieve and become productive citizens. We're really talking about whatever skills are being taught that may be coping skills or social skills or problem-solving skills or emotional regulation and management. And it's those skills and that language that is really what everybody needs to know about, so that if a kid is being taught, take 3 deep breaths when you're feeling angry, the teacher could notice or watch for cues of the student becoming elevated and say, why don't you use your deep breath strategy, or whatever it is, right? And so those are the parts that we have to provide professional development and coaching around to help address some of these misperceptions. So there's some strategies and recommendations in the brief, as well as some links to other resources. And there's some examples in there as well. And so, first it's making sure that we're checking for understanding of district and community leaders, as well as people working within schools, about the legislation and what does need to be protected in terms of records or sharing of protected health information. There should then be some written agreements and a communication plan about protecting confidentiality. So that might be in memorandums of understanding or whatever type of agreement there is between a provider, organization, and a district. And then the plan is to let everyone know what type of information won't be shared without permission and what would be shared as part of, kind of teaming conversations or when interventions are in place, and what the plan is for doing so. And certainly, as I said, in addition to professional development, there's going to need to be follow-up coaching, which can, best be served during team meetings to help people understand, what during their conversation might be discussed, right? And so, as Stacy was just kind of mentioning, at a tier 2 systems meeting, the goal isn't to talk about one kid at a time. The goal is to talk about how many kids are in each intervention, how many are making progress. Is there certainly a student who might need to have a problem-solving conversation? And then again, in my mind, the most important piece of all of this is authentic family engagement. I firmly believe if we are including and involving families all along the way, they will be consenting and deciding together with us what is shared and discussed among all of the people who are involved in making decisions about interventions and supporting their students. And so there's some specific ideas in there about what families should be informed about, how they can be included, and what it means to involve them in decision-making about their students. So I'm just going to give a quick example and then pause to see what thoughts or questions you might have. So here is an example of a tier 2 system conversation. And this is a team that has a community partner on it, and they're looking at their systems response data. So many of you have seen kind of our tracking tool. Excuse me, I gotta lose my voice here. And so, excuse me, take a quick pause.
Kelly, I'm going to let you go on mute for a second. And just before you start your example, one of the resources that's included in the brief, and the brief is still in draft, so we'll be getting it out hopefully in the next couple of weeks. We just need to do some final edits. But one of the things that you'll find in the brief is a recent example from the Pacific Southwest Mental Health Technology Transfer Center that provides summaries of legislation from 4 states around FERPA and HIPAA. And so we thought that that might be useful. And, an advanced preview before the draft comes out in its final form, that's something that you can review. So I think Kelly's okay now to.
Thank you, I'm sorry. All right, so tier 2, tier 3 tracking tool. And here is an example from a small group where they've decided that some students need something more intensive. And so they're going to go into aggression replacement training. And then here is another example where there are students still in that group who have had a lower response rate. And so they're going to have, upon analysis, the team decided that some of the staff are not familiar with the skills that are being taught. So they're going to do some professional development with those teachers around what skills are being used so they can prompt and give feedback about when they see students using them or not. And also align some language on their tier 1 matrix, as well as some of the lessons that they're teaching to all students to kind of have that layered approach. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now just so we can hear comments or questions about what was shared, again, kind of based off of the big takeaways that will be in that brief. I didn't see any questions come up in chat. Does anyone have any questions?
I'm curious, is anybody using the intervention tracking tool as a way to kind of change the behavior of the tier 2, tier 3 systems planning teams? Because I really feel like that that tool in and of itself really helps kind of set the stage for how teams should be operating and functioning at that kind of aggregate view. So they are examining the health of the tier. Is anybody using that?
I mean, that's part of our general tier 2 training. And I have to agree, Susan, like when we show that and say, you need to be able to fill this in, they're just like, oh my God. So that has definitely helped us change the tier 2 conversations. I think that the tougher lift right now is integrating the mental health intervention into that same conversation with the same ways of thinking about in, on, and out rules. I think like they're like they get some of the basic tier 2 interventions, but the mental healthy ones, at least in our state, that's a little bit more of a heavier lift.
Is that, Debbie, do you think that's because of some of the rules that, or the perceived barriers in their system that they don't think they can, I don't know, like, what do you think the hang up is there?
I think it is kind of that old way of thinking, and just, well, we have heard from people, well, we can't know because it's confidential, right, to the confidentiality question. And we push back and say, but you can know what skills someone's working on. And so track, evidence of that in the classroom. But I think the confidentiality hang up is still a little bit part of it, at least for some people. And just this sense that it's so different. I don't think they get that it's still about, developing skills that can be applied in the classroom. I think there's a disconnect with that.
I think we're using confidentiality, I'll be frank, as kind of just holding that up and saying, oh no, we can't change the way we do business because of confidentiality, right? We can't bring families in. We can't, right? We can't. And they hold that up as the excuse. And I don't think we can, that's not like, we can't make excuses anymore, right? And so how do you do that while you're trying to build trust with somebody and say, stop holding that up for not including a wider group of people to make decisions together? Anyway, it's hard, but again, we've got a small window of time to call people out. I feel like before that window kind of closes on us.
I just wanted, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Tammy.
Well, so I just wanted to say, although not where we want to be, someone mentioned earlier about the tier 3 and using that tracking tool with tier 3. So I do have a team that, in talking with the supervisor of the mental health agency that was partnering with the school, just asked her, how could you start? Because she had seen this tracking tool being reported out for some of the school-based, tier 2 interventions. And so they are able to tell us at the tier 3 level how many of their students they're seeing and how many are making progress based on their treatment plan goals, right? So I compare that to just like when we have a individual behavior plan at tier 3, it's not one thing, is each student, they're having to look across all of their students. But again, it's a work in progress. We still don't have our rules about like, when should we refer? They're still doing, they have to fill their caseload kind of thing, but it's those little baby steps, I think that, and I don't think they think that's hard to do, which I found kind of fascinating. So
that's awesome that they don't feel like that's hard to do, because I was worried about not really having a progress monitoring system. So they really didn't even know what that data was. And they were worried that they would require a big lift to even put a progress monitoring system in. So the fact that that data is there, I think that that's a really good connect point to bringing them into the lower tiers and talking about how to co-design with other members of the school community ways to help support kids in those lower level tiers. So I appreciate that. Katie, you were going to say something.
Oh, Susan, I think it was to the point that you were kind of making about like, it's kind of time to call people out, or kind of like and when Kelly was kind of presenting some of the strategies, the thing that was coming to my mind was the research around that managing complex change, right? Like this is complex change and this is systems change. And like, what's the feeling that people are having? Is it about confusion? And that's because we don't have a defined vision or of what this work should or could look like. Or is it about resistance and they don't understand how changing their meeting processes and this conversation could help benefit in the long run? So in my mind, like, where does our TA need to go can kind of come based on, well, what is the feeling? And help us as TA providers and facilitators to kind of keep thinking about where to intersect with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's making me also recognize that when we actually do tier one, again, I'm going to go back to the core, right? I'm going to go back to when everybody's invested in teaching a calming strategy, and a school-based or community-based clinician recognizes, oh my gosh, this is just kind of standard business as usual. We're just asking for kicking it up a notch a little bit with people that they're connected with. It doesn't seem like it's a breach in confidentiality because it's just everybody's doing it, right? And so again, I call our attention to the fact that making it part of the core, decreasing that stigma, decreasing that fear for families to say, I don't want my kid to be called out on a breathing strategy for this because that'll breach their confidentiality. Oh no, it's just what we all do. And so that's kind of what I was thinking about as you were talking.
The other thing that's coming to my mind, we don't have anything updated necessarily for some of those higher, more complex, maybe interventions, but we have a couple of documents that are for check in, check out and systems problem solving, and then like basic skills group, and how to kind of help coordinators bring that kind of data to the team meeting, and then some systems-based solutions to try to help teams stay focused on the systems rather than individual students. So I can drop those in chat. And, like I said, I think they are just some tools to help, like we just try to encourage teams to keep those at the front of their conversation, so that it doesn't turn into individual students, but it really stays focused on systems change.
Also, you guys, I made me think of the TIPS, the team initiated problem solving model. And when teams use that at tier 2, there's some critical features that are, they just like, if they're not meeting a certain criteria, they go through as a team to say, do we have these features in place? I think that's a nice team for tools. Whoa, tool for teams to have too. So.
Yeah, another good point. Again, I feel like these tools are really kind of that, I think what Lucille tends to refer as a field-based intervention, right? And being able to see it in a really concrete way really helps people understand what we're asking for. So appreciate that. Thanks, Katie.
Well, Susan, do you want to pick up the next?
Yeah.
This is this is Debbie. I just had one comment. Thank you so much for sharing these tools. And I forgot about this, except when I saw problem solving. I remember the keynote at the Northeast PBIS conference. I don't know if Amy's still on here or who else might have been there, but I know Amy was there from Vermont. Said she was like, she wanted to change the problem solving to needs solving, which I thought was just kind of an interesting idea. I know, like, we've been thoughtful about our language around unexpected behavior, or but anyway, I was like, ooh, I like it, a needs solving discussion or team. So I just thought I'd share that point. It was Oh my God, I'll find the name. I'm so brain dead today. I apologize, but of our keynote, who gets all the credit, but I will put her name in the chat. I will find it. She's the one who brought the idea to my attention.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. Please don't apologize for, I think we're all at the point in the year where we're just like, wait, words? What is the word for whatever? I know I'm there. It's interesting because somebody was telling me they were on a call with Melinda Baldwin and SAMHSA, North Carolina was presenting yesterday, and they have changed their term. They're not using the word screening anymore. They're calling it teacher-student voice and surveying the landscape. So I thought it's interesting given kind of the politics that we're seeing about how these words are being politicized, how we're being really cautious about the terms that we're using and what implications they have. But I thought that was interesting that North Carolina shared that in addition to kind of the other language shifts. I've heard a couple of people even say on this call referral, and we're really trying hard not to use that term because again, it implies perpetuating that co-located, giving it to somebody else to fix when not holding ourselves accountable for being part of that solution. So again, just reminding ourselves that language is really important and being really clear about the intended outcome as a result of this work to start that with as a point of collaboration and relationship building, or even repairing relationships with family and community. So, what's the intended goal? And then starting with that before we throw out kind of these terms that we throw out and know what they mean, but the general public really doesn't. Oh, yeah. Thanks for sharing, Debbie. All right, I know Kelly has to drop off, so I'm going to take over the sharing piece here. Can everybody see that okay? Awesome. Not that you need another resource in your life, and not that you're going to do your summer reading on kind of the new resources coming out, but we do want you to know that they're available. Again, today we've highlighted the confidentiality brief, and I know Kelly and Lucille and Mark and Bob and others have been working really hard on what seemed like a simple kind of brief, turned into a much heavier lift than we were expecting, but it's looking really good, and you guys have gotten kind of a teaser today on that. But we also wanted to provide kind of a coming soon, get really excited about another brief from the first randomized control trial. And so even though it's out in kind of a peer-reviewed publication, we wanted to distill it into a really kind of practical guide and lessons learned from the randomized control trial for ISF. And then we're also really excited about the next practice brief, and that comes in large part due to many people on this call have contributed to the teaching and learning stories from the field and some of the demonstration sites that we've been working with across the last couple of years. And we're really excited to kind of share those stories from the field. And again, I think that it takes really complex systems change discussions into really practical applications that make it really concrete and much more feasible and realistic when we listen to the stories from the field, especially when they're data points that are showing that things are improving all around. So just really appreciate the teaching and learning stories. And I don't know when we expect to have that one out. I know that Bob and Mark are working on the intro section as we speak. So again, we're hoping to get those out this summer, and check your inbox. We'll flag those for you, make sure you get access to that. We also have been working really hard on updating our PBIS national website, right? PBIS.org. And we just put new pages up. Katie, if you can grab them from the top of the chat, I think I had posted them before a lot of us were on today. Specifically, 2 pages were just updated, as of yesterday, about what PBIS is and why we should focus on PBIS. as a mental health initiative. And we're just really proud of some of the wording that we were able to incorporate into kind of PBIS, the next generation of PBIS, if you will. We've never been satisfied, I guess, with introducing ISF as a new term and it's kind of being branded outside of the PBIS lens. But we want to be really clear that ISF is not different than PBIS. It is the next generation of PBIS. And it's about interconnecting other child serving systems within the PBIS framework and connecting it in an interconnected way. And so these terms that are getting thrown around are making it even more complex and convoluted to bring people around the table to really kind of harness an integrated kind of approach. But we're getting there. Our language is definitely changing. And so we just wanted to call that out. But make sure that in the topics, under the topics page, when you go to the home page, when you enter pbis.org, that there's a whole range of topics dedicated to a number of mental health topics, including mental health, social emotional well-being, but we also have information related to opioid crisis and substance misuse. And we've got information that I think could be really pertinent from the School Climate Transformation Grant. And even though you may not be part of that grant or participating in that, a lot of the webinars we've covered at our center this year have included mental health topics. I'm especially excited about the last 3 topics from the last couple of months. And Kelly mentioned that we had one yesterday for the SEA that's really brilliant. Rhode Island and Washington State did a really, really amazing job. And as soon as that recording comes out, we'll alert you. On the page for the mental health and social emotional well-being, again, Katie led us into this awesome video. So as you're sharing information and want a way to kind of give really critical message in a really clear and concise way, Katie led the Spark video, which we're really proud of. And then of course, we've got the implementation guide that breaks down all of the chapters. We have been doing, I've been leading a lot of work with a book study and taking different state professional learning communities through reading each chapter one at a time, and then coming on one time a month for an hour session to talk and discuss what we're learning in each of those chapters. So that's been really helpful. And so we're happy to share some of the discussion guides that go along with those chapter readings. Again, we're trying to make our graphics look really polished and professional and easy to understand. And so you'll see evidence of that. And again, thanks to Katie and I think Jen Norton and others who really were instrumental in making these look really polished and beautiful. And then again, the School Climate Transformation Grant has the resources, has recordings. So maybe maybe Debbie, you bring that school to a watch party and you guys watch a segment of one of these and kind of talk about it on the other side. But I'm really big into watch parties, given that we've got so many recordings of such amazing information. And it's great to watch it on your own and build your own fluency. You also, I was able to be a part of a face-to-face session last week in Washington State. And we actually asked, as we're building capacity of new ISF and PBIS trainers, we asked folks to stand up and present on some of the slides. And so that might be something that you do as you're trying to build capacity with local members in your school districts and your regions, is to practice giving overviews and making sure our messages are consistent and making sure that we're all kind of understanding the same thing when we look at these, even when we're defining ISF, even when we're talking about kind of what I just mentioned about this being the next generation of PBIS, do we all have the same messages? So those are some of the ways that we're building capacity in very concrete methods. So, okay. We also have new publications. So that's the publication page. You can identify a keyword and get it really quickly. But I've been really proud of all of the amazing resources coming out from all the different work groups on the National Center site. And you can see some of those here.
Susan, can we also give the tip that if you go to and maybe others know this, but if you go to publications and then all publications, it does pull up the most recent publication. So I'm amazed at how many things are being pushed out recently. And so that's the tip to seeing if you're missing anything new that's been published lately.
Thank you for that reminder, Katie. Yeah, some of the things that we do are automatic. I forget aren't as intuitive because I'm on that site so much. But I recognize the struggle with navigating our site because it is really dense and there are a lot of materials to kind of go through. But yeah, thanks for that reminder. And then finally on Monday there. Oh, so this isn't Monday. There's something coming up Monday. This is from a April 28th session and a resource that was shared from IES. And so this is a new IES funded publication promoting social behavioral success for learning in elementary schools. This just came out in March. If you're not aware of it, you have the slides for today, so you can go quickly on that website. But in a nutshell, and Kelly Perales was part of the team that provided the list of recommendations from the research. Here are the practice recommendations. Kernels of evidence-based practices for building social emotional health in schools. And turns out, what does it look like? PBIS. So they didn't call it out as such, but you can see evidence of that. And I really appreciated number 5 about the organizational system and the need for districts really to be the ones that, and regions and states, but that organizational system really has to be designed to help support schools. And our only mission is to remove barriers to making sure that every student is thriving inside of our schools, right? So I appreciated all of them, but highlighting kind of the systems notion. So we wanted to give you a couple minutes just to kind of take a deep breath and look through those resources. So I'm going to stop sharing. I want to just do a quick reflection. We're a small group now. I know a lot of people had to hop off for other meetings, but just kind of wondering what your thoughts were as you were looking at some of those resources, or if you geeked out on something I just shared or excited to kind of learn about it. We'd love to hear from you about that.
I'm a little brain dead already, as I shared, and I'm like easily overwhelmed. So it's very excited, but also overwhelmed. But I'm glad to have them in the PowerPoint. So I started with the first thing you shared was just simply saying, you know, the page that describes what PBIS is has evolved to integrate ISF and just the way we talk about it. And I just wanted to say I was so excited about that. And I was looking at some of the bullets, and I definitely think they'll be helpful. Like even the language where I think it's at encouraging and acknowledging behavior for some of our like responsive classroom friends and other people, that I think that some of the language I see is more inclusive, even in just little ways. But I can see the prioritization of family and student voice in the description too. So I was just excited about that. And I really quickly got overwhelmed and couldn't keep up with looking at all the others. But I mean, if we only change just the foundation of our PBIS system to make it integrated from the beginning, that's amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about what if we just spent next year just focusing on making sure, I think, you know, I made this point earlier, and Debbie, I really appreciated your quote, you can't fix people in broken environments, because I don't think everybody understands what we mean by core. I think this group does, but I really, you know, and Tony Biglin talks about this, and that if we can make our environments nurturing, imagine what we could do by way of resilience and building a better way forward, right, for everybody. And imagine the decreases in the number of intensive supports that that we would need inside our schools. So just that ecosystem where everybody's thriving, including the adults, and having people understand that PBIS basically our center, and I'm so proud of the work of all the partners in our center. We have the outcomes you get from just implementing tier 1 are the mental health outcomes. And we've got to make that direct link and connection for folks to understand that PBIS is a mental health initiative, period. And we're the only game in town, guys, that have that data. Oh, good. Okay. Angela, you were able to make the IES. I didn't mean to overwhelm. We just were excited about all of the different things. And I know our minds are just flooded. So I completely appreciate that. And so even if, you take a couple weeks and then come back to the PowerPoint, or you email us and say, what was that thing you said? We're happy to kind of come back and walk through them in a much slower pace.
Well, Susan, I want to thank you for this. I came late, so I missed that really rich conversation about the confidentiality. But the reason I was late was because we were working on the application for the next iteration of the Model DIM. And one of the things we're going to do next year is we're going to select a school that's doing PBIS and one that's not, and do exactly what you're talking about, trying to make sure that we infuse give them that foundation of PBIS already infused with mental health. So I'm really excited to see how that's going to work. And this is great resources for us. So I was looking, I was like, yes.
Amazing,
So
Sheila.
thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah, Sheila, I'm so glad you're here. When you all shared your MOU checklist, you made our monograph stuff much, much better, as everybody on this call always makes our stuff better. So I was wondering if you all would be willing to share the resources that you have around developing an MOU, because confidentiality and MOU kind of go hand in hand. And I really think that it's important for us to see the MOU being the driver for changing behavior of the adults, and how that is a living document that shouldn't just be, okay, we're finished with the MOU. Right. Anytime we encounter a barrier or whatever, I think we should always be in revision mode with MOU, because that's going to be the driver of the structures and systems change that promote our changes in behavior. And so they go really hand in hand. And I was just wondering if you would be willing to share that. Again, another resource.
I know. Yeah, I'll see if I can find it real quick. But having said that, it's important to note that when we just got the finalized MOU like 2 weeks ago. So what we did throughout our district installation is did the training and then revised what was like a provisional MOU until we got to the final MOU. And I think that sometimes people struggle with doing that MOU in the beginning. And the reason is because they don't have the information yet, like what actually are those staff changes that you need to make, what it's gonna look like in terms of working with your school leadership team. And those are things that were in place when that final MOU came. So I just wanna make that clear, but I will see if I can pull.
I love that. I love the notion of having a provisional MOU just as a starting point, just so that by not having that prevents you from being able to move forward. If you can make some small agreements on the way that we're going to change the way we operate and function, knowing that it's going to be an iterative process, I think is an important notion. Thank you.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not possible because of the agency. The agency say you have to have something before you start. And so if you can kind of go back to the lawyers and say, okay, we need to we need something, but we know we're going to change it by the end of the year. Even just having said that to them, sometimes you can get them to relax a little bit. I did hear a group one time say, oh my gosh, I don't think the lawyers understood at all what we were trying to do. And part of it was because they didn't understand what was coming, after they talked with their teams and talked with the mental health and how that's going to work and where they're going to be located. So sometimes it's a task that you just can't do right then. You just can't do it. So yeah, I don't have a problem. We can share anything we have. That's been always the TA centers. I'm at the Michigan MTSS Technical Assistance Center, and it's always we share.
Thank you.
Fine.
Thank you. And even if you can't find it right now, Sheila, don't worry about it. We can send it out later to folks on the call. I also heard a rumor that, I don't know if any of you remember the MTSSB randomized control trial, multi-state randomized control trial that, that we were part of, feels like a decade ago or more, is finally, the report's finally coming out in either June or July. So we just got word of that, and I was celebrating, but I have no idea what it's going to say. So I'm assuming since I'm putting it out.
I'm looking forward to reading that, Susan.
I know, Diane. I was looking at
It
you.
wasn't
going,
that long ago. We wrapped that up in 2017, so 5 years.
Yeah. And we knew it was going to be embargoed from the start.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's been forever. And
It has been, but I can't wait to get my hands on it.
I know, I'm excited. So hopefully that'll also, again, build that research base for us to make the case to continue our journey through the next generation of PBIS, right? Any other comments or ahas or sharing before I have a couple more things just to let you know about. And then I think, oh, thank you so much, Sheila. Very, very appreciative.
No worries.
All the resources you shared are, like you said, very just well put together and everything else. But the idea of a watch party, I haven't really thought of that much before. Years ago, we did that as school psychologists with a webinar, but for the PBIS idea, or for PBIS teams, or for our MDE team, such a great idea. So just kind of a model of how PBIS works sometimes too, when others have good ideas and we take them and modify them to make them our own. So thank you for sharing out that idea too.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Angela. This is awesome, Sheila. Just kind of taking a really quick look. I know I've seen it before, but I'm geeking again all over again. So I really appreciate you sharing that. I think that'd be really valuable for folks. So thanks.
Thank you.
All right, one more thing, and then
Oh wait, and I want to say something though too.
Yeah, of course.
That I want to give credit where credit is due. We did make an amendment to what you guys already had, right, in the in your monograph. So you know, we just kind of stole your ideas and just elaborated. That's all.
Well, again, you guys always make our stuff better, so we're very appreciative.
This looks amazing, Sheila. I just started looking at it. Thank you so much. I really like the explicitness of the concepts on there. I think sometimes I think the MOU is just like, you do this, we do this, like game over. But I am definitely going to borrow this.
Oh, by all means, we actually have a longer document, but I needed to like fix it where we have the checklist items and then we have suggested language that you can use, but I'm still working on that. And when I get that together, then I'll also share that too, because that was helpful for we made it specifically for our partners that we were working with. But after I looked at it, it wasn't ready for the big time. So let's see.
There's, again, and I don't want to flood us. Yeah, maybe I do want to flood us with resources. I don't know. There was a coaching document from 2021 that we worked on. And I was wondering at some point if you could share that, because I think in the ISF space, do you remember? You might not remember it, so I probably shouldn't bring it up, but that's another thing that I was on another call with another state that they were completely geeking on in terms of building capacity around ISF. So so congratulations again for that. And we can email that out to the group if folks are more interested in kind of the coaching pieces. But Michigan, you always do such a great job.
That's okay. I'll have to look. I'm really trying to think of what that looks like, but I'll see if I can dig it up.
Okay. Yeah, I know it was 2021. So that feels like a decade ago.
Okay. Yeah. It's probably been revised, I'm sure.
I'm sure. That's why I didn't want to share the one I had, because I'm sure it was revised.
Yeah, if you send me the one you have, I can then send it just to my email, and I'll see if it's been revised.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, bye.
All right. We were going to do report outs, but we had such a small group that I really enjoyed having kind of a large, or just kind of staying in the main room. So this is happening on Monday, 12:30 East to 5, and it's going to, I don't know, I'm really excited about it. I was able, luck of the draw, am able to attend. So even if you can't attend live, you can register and get the recording later. But I know that there's a lot of funding right now coming. If anybody subscribes to SAMHSA, it's amazing, all the funding kind of coming out daily from that agency. But I'm excited to see what they have to offer on Monday during this virtual summit. So we wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. We can pop the website and
I think I
chat.
got the link to the registration in the chat, Susan.
Oh, thanks, Katie. I was just going to pop that in.
It's really
Okay.
long, but I think it's working. So someone tell me if it's not.
Yeah, yeah. And again, even if you can't attend live, I think they record them and you'll get the recording. It's nice to see so much attention on it. I just worry that we're going to just perpetuate old systems. I don't know that. I just hope we hear some common language, and I think we will in this space, but in other spaces, I'm kind of worried about this perpetuating that co-location and that fee for service and the caseload kind of model. But I'm really I'm eager to participate here on Monday. And then the registration is open for the forum. So if remember, this is going to be a smaller forum than normal. It is going to be our first in-person forum in the last couple of years, as you guys well know. So we're really, really excited about it. Registration is open. Book your hotel if you don't do anything else. We are offering, again, our mental health strand. I'm so excited about it. We're going to have exemplars. Sheila's going to be presenting. Yay, Sheila, from Michigan. We've got our folks from Florida and the research project. We've got a whole panel. One of our friends, Kleinita, Lee Collier. We've got an amazing panel that's going to talk about alignment efforts across the country. Kentucky's going to be one of our exemplars. I know I'm missing a whole bunch of you probably on this call, please forgive me, but we're so excited about the mental health sessions. And we've got mental health literally in every single session, even outside of the designated mental health strand. So really excited about this event coming up. And then finally, we've got the dates for next year. So we're going to continue our PLC journey together and continue to learn and grow with this group that we just love and adore. So put these on your calendar. And even if you can't join us live, we always record them. And so those are the dates. Yeah, and thanks, Katie. Yeah, and if we would love a poster if you want to submit on a topic or something you're geeking about, please join us and submit a poster. We're always looking for our demo sites and others to showcase their efforts. So you have the slides. Those are the dates, and that is all I have. Any other comments, or somebody want to geek out or celebrate, or we are always so appreciative of your time and all the work that you guys do each and every day. We learn so much from you in this space. So really, really appreciate everybody's questions and discussions and celebrations and being so transparent about some of the things that you're really struggling with. We all get better as a result of you all having these discussions with us. So really, really appreciate everybody on this call. If we don't see you, have a wonderful break, get some downtime, turn that laptop off, turn that social media off, turn the news off. and hopefully you get some outdoor time and some family time and enjoy yourselves.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure. See you all soon.